Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Wednesday, November the 29th, 2023. Today I want to talk about Nigel Farage, the British politician who is famous for advocating for Britain's withdrawal from the European Union. And in 2016, there was a referendum in which the British voted to leave. And Nigel Farage has not gone away. He has always been around. He's made sort of a huge presence on TV and the media, and he seems to be a sort of a guardian of Brexit. He keeps saying he wants to disappear, but he never succeeds in disappearing. He's always there. And today I want to look at his horoscope. Now, the reason I want to look at his horoscope today is because it is his Saturn return today, November the 29th, 2023. So the planet Saturn takes around 29 and a half years to move around the sun. So when we're around 29 and a half, Saturn returns to where it was when we were born. And then we have a second Saturn return 29 and a half years later in our late 50s. And Nigel Farage on his last birthday, April the 3rd of this year, he turned 59, and he has his Saturn return. And today is his Saturn return, and I will be looking at that Saturn return. I'll also be looking at his horoscope in general, see what his prospects are. Is he really going to go away? Right now he's on TV, on reality TV. I think it's called I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. And I think he's been thrown into the Australian jungle, and I think he got paid £1.5 million for that. So him and the other contestants on this program, they're on television. Obviously, I'm not watching it. Not even on YouTube. So I'm just telling you what I've seen on the news. So it is kind of interesting, though, that he is in the Australian jungle on this reality TV show during his Saturn return. Okay, so before I talk about Nigel Farage, I want to look at the astrology and I Ching for today, which is Wednesday, November the 29th, 2023. So this is a chart for today. I've set it for New York at noon. Today, November the 29th. So the main thing happening is that the Moon and Jupiter are in mutual reception by exaltation, because the Moon is in Cancer and Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. And Jupiter is in Taurus and the Moon is exalted in Taurus. So when we've got mutual reception between the Moon and Jupiter, especially as they are in sextile aspect, especially if you're in the Americas and Western Europe, that sextile aspect, you're not going to feel it if you're in Australia, New Zealand. But still, everyone has got this mutual reception between the Moon and Jupiter by exaltation. It is really very fortunate. It's stabilizing. It allows us to ground ourselves. So if there's been recent turmoil, recent unpleasantness, we can really start to ground ourselves, and we can start to focus on giving ourselves security. At the same time, it's a great time to start things, because when we start things, particularly in a sort of a business sense, there's always this danger that they'll blow up on the launch pad. Now, there is no guarantee that anything won't blow up on the launch pad. But if you start something with Moon-Jupiter sextile, and they're in mutual reception by exaltation, there's a good chance of eventual success. And so this relationship between the Moon and Jupiter by mutual reception, by this mutual reception of exaltation, I suspect is the dominant theme for the day, particularly if we just have a quiet and productive life and we don't try and do anything overly dramatic. But there are other things going on. Venus, is conjunct the South Node. This is something of a two-edged sword. Now, the South Node can just be seen as part of the nodal axis. There's the South Node, there's the North Node. The German schools of astrology, Reinhold Ebertin, Alfred Witter, the Hamburg school, they see the nodal axis as simply being about connections, who we connect with, our network of connections. And so it may be that with Venus conjunct the South Node today, we can make new contacts. Great day for picking up the phone, talking to someone new, seeing if you've got something in common, and perhaps using these contacts at a later date, perhaps to get a job, for business purposes, whatever. So we can see the nodes like that, but there's a more traditional way of seeing the nodes, which basically sees the South Node as being unfortunate, as being of the nature of Saturn, and the North Node being of the nature of Jupiter. So if you take the view that the South Node is unfortunate, if you take the view that Venus is a planet of relationships, there is perhaps a danger of unfortunate relationships, getting in touch with the wrong people, being in touch with people who can't really be trusted. And if you go further and you connect the South Node with previous incarnations or with things going on in the past, there may be people who are bad for us, who we've grown out of, who we may be tempted to get back in touch with. So be careful. When you're meeting people, ask yourself what's going on. Ask yourself whether you can really trust this person. And particularly if you're meeting someone who has been bad for you in the past, there's a good chance that they're going to be bad for you in the future as well. Now, one other thing going on today is that Uranus is square the Mars-Jupiter midpoint. So there's Mars, there's Jupiter. The Mars-Jupiter midpoint is at around 20 Aquarius, and so Uranus is square the Mars-Jupiter midpoint. Uranus on the Mars-Jupiter midpoint gives us a slightly different spin on the day. I've talked about this Moon-Jupiter mutual reception, and I've said how it is quite stabilizing. But Uranus on the Mars-Jupiter midpoint is not at all stabilizing. Mars-Jupiter is about action, often successful action, but action nonetheless. And Uranus is about surprises, about earthquakes. It's about making the sudden decision to take action. So everything is calm, we're minding our own business, and suddenly we have to do something. We may see a sudden opportunity. So this may be fortunate, Uranus on the Mars-Jupiter midpoint. We see there's something, we have to do it, and we want to do it right now, this moment. And maybe that is good. But there's also a danger that there's a certain lack of discipline. We are so desperate for action that we do crazy stuff, and we sort of completely destroy the calm with no real benefit to ourselves and other people. So if you are suddenly tempted to do something, I'm not saying don't do it, but think it through. Is this really what you need to do? Do you have to do it right now, or can it wait? Or perhaps this thing you want to do on a whim may not be a good idea at all. Okay, so that's my view of the astrology for today. I think overall it is a good day, simply because that Moon-Jupiter mutual reception by exaltation, is so fortunate. However, that Venus conjunct the South Node, we need to watch out. Think carefully about the people you're mixing with. They might be very good for you. They might help you in your career and your business and so forth. But certain people, I think, could be bad for you if you give them a chance to worm their way into your life. Okay, so what I want to do now is do my forecasts for the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for today, which is Wednesday, November the 29th, 2023. Aries, you feel quietly optimistic. It does seem that things are getting better, even though you don't see any immediate opportunity to express yourself, at least not in a public sense. And I think what is making all the difference is your ability to root yourself in something that has stability, that isn't just a one-day wonder. Taurus, you're able to monitor a changing world in real time and adjust your words and actions to fit the situation. It's all about a free flow of thoughts and feelings, plus a high level of sensitivity. At the same time, you benefit from a sextile aspect between the Moon and Jupiter, which makes you lucky, especially in terms of messaging and phone calls. Gemini, it's worth giving a bit of thought to money. Whatever the current situation, good, bad, or terrible, there are things you can do to improve matters, and it's not the obvious moves that matter. It's about things that emerge from your imagination. But don't worry, there's no need to take risks, no need to do anything crazy. Cancer, you're creating a nice balance between expansion and discipline. You know what you want to achieve, and you also know what sacrifices are required. And it all seems very natural, especially as the Moon is now moving through your star sign. In relationships, whatever their nature, whatever their stage, there's a sense of togetherness and mutual understanding. Leo, there are things you want, but many ways to achieve them. The methods you use will vary from week to week, from day to day, and right now the best way of achieving your goals is to take an indirect approach, moving round the obstacle and not giving away your motives. Later on, you can be more direct. Virgo, there are some things in your life that you've had enough of. They might have been fun for a time, but they're now past their sell-by date. So it's okay to move on. But not everything can be abandoned, and today you might realize that one or two people really are trustworthy, even if you find them annoying. Libra, Venus, your ruler, is now exactly conjunct the South Node. It may just mean that you'll be in contact with lots of different people, but it's possible that you stray into the wrong areas. Yet it needn't be a bad day. If you behave yourself, you can harness your emotional resources to achieve good results in your career. Scorpio, not everyone knows what they're doing, and some people may be on the verge of making a mistake. If you pay attention, you'll understand what's going on, and you might have a chance to provide some gentle guidance. On a different note, you're looking for a different view of the world, and someone out there can provide it. Sagittarius, Jupiter, your ruler, is in mutual reception with the Moon by exaltation. This puts you in a good position, even if it doesn't feel like it. But you have to go about things in the right way. It's not a time for over-the-top extroversion. Instead, you need to be reflective and quietly put your plans into action. And You must stick to the schedule. Capricorn. The Moon and Saturn are making a fortunate trine. As a result, you're someone who is taken seriously, and your mere presence will often be enough to make things go your way. Or perhaps you just have to explain your particular view of the world, using simple words. But in close relationships, partners are very sure about their likes and dislikes. Accept the situation, rather than ask questions. Aquarius. It's a day for organisation, moving things around and having a close look at the details of your own and other people's finances. Once you get into the swing of things, there'll be no stopping you, and you'll be making life a whole lot easier for yourself. And right now, reliability is the greatest virtue. Pisces. It's a day for enjoying yourself in a way that is healthy and self-sustaining. It's about thinking about all of your needs: the need for fun, the need for health, the need for companionship. There shouldn't be a conflict. No concerns about doing one thing at the expense of another thing. It's the right way to be. Okay, so I'm now going to move to the I Ching. As always, I ask the question, what is Wednesday going to be like for people watching this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 3, difficulty at the beginning. It's kind of not a bad hexagram, even though it starts with a difficulty, because it suggests that the difficulty is only at the beginning. We're in a situation where it's hard work, where we might feel we just can't do it, but we're stuck. But this hexagram has a high social content. And I think this kind of fits in with the fact that Venus is conjunct the South Node, particularly from a sort of Germanic perspective, that it's all about networking, the people around us. So difficulty at the beginning means that if we've got a problem, we can get help, and I think that is actually an important theme of this hexagram. So if you're involved in something and you just can't do it, don't panic, because what you're dealing with is the first stage of a problem. And there are some moving lines here. This first line moves. And so the meaning of that first line moving is like, okay, stop what you're doing. Don't rush into solving it. You've got to look at the problem, work out what needs to be done, and don't be in a hurry. Then this fourth line moves as well, and so here our relationship to the problem is evolving, and we indeed start to recognize that we do need outside help, and indeed we can get outside help. So it's not surprising that this hexagram, difficulty at the beginning, does move to hexagram 45, which is gathering together. This is an extremely sociable hexagram, and this tells us what we're going to be doing with the problem we've just had. We bring people together, and people will come our way. So this is a very fortunate outcome. Got a problem? Think about it. Get some help, and I suspect in most cases the problem will be resolved. And if there has been recently some kind of social problem, difficulties in relationships, you've fallen out with someone, you've had a misunderstanding, then this hexagram 45 suggests it can be resolved. The Wilhelm translation of this hexagram, it says gathering together, but in parentheses it has the word union. So you really can come together with people, and perhaps you can act as some form of leader, or someone else is going to be the leader, coming around, gathering around a person who is strong-willed, who can deal with various problems and issues. And so whatever that difficulty was at the beginning of the day, it looks like there is a solution, and I think that solution relates to other people and how you deal with them. Okay, so I now want to look at Nigel Farage. I have looked at him before, but it is his Saturn return, so I think it's certainly a good time to look at his horoscope. So this is Nigel Farage's horoscope. To my surprise, we do actually have a time of birth for him. Very often, in the UK, we don't have this because I don't think there's any obligation to put a time of birth on a birth certificate. I think in Scotland there's a time of birth. There's no time of birth unless you're a twin. And then I think they put the time of birth. At least that's how it was, traditionally. So Nigel Farage, he's got no air in his chart. I suppose he doesn't really spend too much time analysing what's going on, not weighing things up. He's not really that kind of person. He's an Aries. He's got Sun and Mars in Aries. He just knows what's right. It's just obvious to him. That's a very fiery thing. He's got Sun in Aries, Mars in Aries. He's got Moon in Sagittarius. So with all that fire, he just knows. He just knows it. He knows the answer. He doesn't have to think about it. He doesn't have to work it through. Now, we shouldn't condemn that. That is an absolutely reasonable way of making up one's mind. It's not for all of us to sort of agonize and about this way or that way. And of course, if you know something is true, it really does help in terms of presenting yourself to the public. I think the public don't really like people who procrastinate. I mean, they don't have a natural feel for someone who procrastinates. But if you just know it, some people are just going to love it. You just know the answer. You know what the answer is. You know that Britain should leave the European Union and Britain should stay out of the European Union. And he's incredibly dynamic. I mean, no doubt about it. Whatever you think about him, Moon and it's not just Sun, Mars, and Moon in fire signs. He's also got Jupiter there as well. So no problems with dynamism. That Moon at 26 Sagittarius, it's actually on a point called the galactic center. Supposedly, the center of the galaxy, and it's at 26 Sagittarius. So there's something sort of a bit cosmic about Nigel. And how would I see that? I suppose the galactic center represents maybe the way the cosmos should be moving, and the way things should be moving down here on Earth. What is the fate of our nation? What is the fate of the world? And this sort of backlash against globalism is part of the world's destiny. It's not about whether it's good or bad to have this backlash against globalism. I mean, I know a lot of people think it's really almost evil and perverse and fascistic and all that kind of stuff. That globalism is somehow the way forward. Not necessarily. It's neither good nor bad. Globalism is neutral, but there are going to be times when the world is very globalistic, and there are other times when a nation state is going to be important, and perhaps his moon on the galactic center puts him in touch with something. But yeah, it's a very definite chart, and I think he is an extremely fiery person. Now, as far as his Saturn is concerned, there's his Saturn at 1 degree 5 minutes Pisces. Now, if you look at the chart for today, when I was looking at the astrology for today, you can see that Saturn is at 1 degrees 4 minutes Pisces. In fact, we can set up a chart for his Saturn return. This is the precise moment of his Saturn return, when Saturn returns to where it was when he was born. That precise moment is 11:36:40 p.m. Well, we'll forget the seconds, but it's very late this evening, London time. His Saturn will return to where it was when he was born, and in fact, that is the chart for his Saturn return. I don't know whether we can really interpret it like a return chart. In theory, this chart should say something about his next 29 years. If we take that as a valid chart, we might see that you can see that there's the IC on the chart for his Saturn return. The Sun-Mars conjunct the IC. So that seems a bit dangerous. There's not going to be much stability and security for him in his last 29 years in his next 29 years of life. I don't think that's a chart of someone looking forward to a graceful old age, having Sun-Mars conjunction on the IC. I wouldn't have thought so. And in fact, if you look at Nigel's natal chart, his natal chart has 1127 Virgo, and his Saturn return chart has 1001. Sorry, that's the wrong one. His Saturn return, November the 29th, it has 1014 Virgo. So he's kind of got the exact same degree of his ascendant. I somehow regard that as being important. And his Saturn is in the 6th house in Pisces. You might say Saturn in the 6th house. That may relate to health issues. I think he does have to be careful about his health, especially as in his Saturn return chart. Saturn is fairly close to the square. You've got Mars square Saturn, you've kind of got Sun square Saturn. So I think that there could be some health issues for Nigel. He has to look after himself in the jungle because he's got his Saturn return there. But I think that the Saturn return it's about dealing with what we're doing with our life. How are we doing with it, with one's life? I mean, I think with Nigel, with Saturn in the 6th, a lot of it is about properly structuring his life. Maybe in terms of health. I mean, the traditional view of Nigel Farage would be him in the pub with a pint of beer. I mean, that was his standard thing. I think he's already sort of started to slow down on that, but I don't know if he still drinks. But yeah, organizing his life is going to be really important, with particular emphasis on health. But it's also about his whole direction in life. Where is he going to? Is this the end of his political career? Is it not the end of his political career? can we tell? So looking at Nigel's solar return, this is where the sun return. This is when the sun returned to where it was at his last birthday. You can see that he's got moon exactly on the midheaven. The moon is the public. Moon on the midheaven. That means he's still in the limelight, and he's got moon moving towards a trine of Venus. And it's making a trine of Uranus. So his last lunar return very much hints at the fact that he's not going away. At least he's not going away during his 60th year. His 60th year starting on April the 3rd, 2023. So that's just 1 year. But what about the future? Where is he actually going? Is he going to go away in the end? I think it might be useful to consider his Vedic chart. Here is Nigel's Vedic chart. So let's have a look at this. So you'll see that he's a Pisces in his Vedic chart, because that's in Indian astrology, everything moves back 24 degrees. And so he no longer has a Sun-Mars conjunction in Aries. It's a Sun-Mars conjunction in Pisces. He has Saturn in the 7th house in Aquarius. Now, again, in his Western chart, Saturn in Pisces. Eastern chart, Saturn in Aquarius. Saturn is strong in Aries. Sorry, in Aquarius, because Saturn rules Aquarius. Further, if you look at planetary strength, down here, there's this system called Shadbala, which has six methods of evaluating planetary strength. And Saturn in his chart is the strongest planet, and Venus is the second strongest planet. So that Saturn in the 7th is strong. Further, his Saturn has Dikbala, which means directional strength. So when you've got people with Saturn in the 7th, in their Indian chart, remember in his Western chart, he had Saturn in the 6th, but in his Eastern chart, he's got Saturn in the 7th. And so that means he has Dikbala, directional strength. People who have Saturn in the 7th house, who have Dikbala, are incredibly difficult to defeat. Really difficult. They won't go away. Another example of a politician who had Saturn in Dikbala was Nicola Sturgeon, who used to be Scotland's First Minister. She just stayed on the scene for ages and ages and ages, and she just wouldn't go away. I mean, finally she came unstuck, but it just, she seemed to be on the brink for a long time, but she just kept going. And I think that was her Saturn. In the 7th house. Now, Nicola Sturgeon, in her Eastern chart, she had Saturn in Aries, which was fallen. And in the end, maybe Saturn in Aries got her because it was fallen. But Nigel Farage has got Saturn in Aquarius in its own sign in his Vedic chart. So he is absolutely not someone to be underestimated. Now, in terms of the periods in his life, how they're working through. In August 2012, he started his Rahu Dasha, and the Rahu Dasha lasts for 18 years, from August 2012 to August 2030. Now, his Rahu is really well placed, because it's in Gemini, which is So Rahu is, I think it's regarded as being exalted in Gemini in Indian astrology. I think it's regarded as being exalted in Gemini actually in Western astrology as well. So Rahu is strong by virtue of being in Gemini. It's also in the 11th house. Now, the 11th house is regarded as being, I think it's called an upachaya house, which means it's a growing house. Things improve in the 11th house. And generally, malefics, like Rahu is a malefic, Saturn, Sun, malefics do well in upachaya houses. So this Rahu in the 11th is really strong. So 2012 through to 2030, he's going to be difficult. He's going to be difficult to get rid of, and he's going to be strong. So if you look at the sub periods, because you've got a big period lasting 18 years, and this 18-year period can be divided up into smaller periods. In a period from August 2015 to September 2017, he was in the Rahu major period and the Jupiter sub period. You know, Jupiter, benefic planet, and of course that was a time where Britain had the referendum and voted to leave the European Union. But now we move on, and he is at the moment in a Rahu major period, Ketu sub period, and Rahu is the head of the dragon, Ketu is the tail of the dragon, and this period lasts from February 2023 to February 2024. So North Node, South Node, this year is real up and down. The dragon is going crazy. That's what's happening. And he's in the jungle. I mean, dragons are connected with snakes. I don't know. That's kind of what you'd expect in the jungle, isn't it? But it's not. It's not just about I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. It's a time of real turmoil, of the extremes of perhaps good and bad luck, and it's also the central sub period of his Rahu Dasha. Now, February 2024, he moves out of his Ketu sub-period, and he moves into he'll be in his Saturn major period and his Venus sub-period, and that lasts from February 2024 to February 2027. His Venus is his second most powerful planet by Shadbala. And you can see that his Venus is in Taurus, its own sign. So, if you are thinking that Nigel Farage is done for, if you are looking at what's going on in the I'm a celebrity, get me out of here, and you think that's the end of Nigel going crazy at the end of it, I don't think so. But by February, I think that Nigel will have made up his mind what he wants to do. Venus is in Taurus, 10th house. Nigel Farage, I don't think is going anywhere. I think his prominence and success in British politics is going to quite possibly, certainly the prominence aspect of it is going to increase. Certainly from February onwards, as soon as he moves into his Venus subdasha, I think, I don't think he's going anywhere. I would see further political success for him, probably in the wake of Britain's next election and the aftermath of this election. So, very short term for Nigel Farage, things are very unstable for him. And I'm thinking that the Saturn return, forgetting about the fact that in his sixth house, with his Saturn return, he's probably thinking about what he wants to do, what he has to do, what he must do, what he is obliged to do. And I'm thinking that when the dust has settled, when he's worked it all through, he'll probably realise that he has no choice but to commit himself further to British politics. And I mean, I suppose he may feel he has to do things to safeguard Brexit. From February 2024 onwards, he is in a perfect position to really propel himself onto the British political scene. If you're not a fan of Nigel Farage, I'm sorry about that, but that's the way I see it. Overall, he has got a very fortunate chart, and maybe in terms of politics, he's only just started. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say about Nigel Farage. I hope he has a happy Saturn return, and I hope you found what I said interesting, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.